This life is not an easy one, particularly for a believer. We see the world for what it really is, and many of us are modern day versions of Noah preparing for the ark the Most High is making for us, while trying to warn others about the flood that's coming. Only this time it won't be water, but fire. We warn, but people don't listen. Many write you off as crazy and they disrespect you. It is definitely hard to be a believer during these last days. But even with how hard it is for us now, we know that the reason we're warning others today to get right with Yah and to submit to Him is because the times that are coming are going to be even worse for those who are not right with Yahuwah and do not believe in Yahusha. I know that many people I see in this world are not going to be ready. It's very hard to watch. The people are completely mad and rebellious. And with that said, you would actually think that the most rebellious people, the ones that actually truly reject Yahusha, will be the hardest people to talk to. Well, obviously, some of them are. But there is another group that is even harder to reach and deal with. And for some of us, it is the hardest thing to understand at first. I've tried many times to communicate the danger of labels, because people can attach a label to something, and because that label is on it, it is now deemed to be safe. It's like the FDA approved stamp. People literally deem what's good for them to take in their body and what's not good for them because of this FDA approval stamp. It's just a label that tells people it has passed this group's standards. But the thing is, what if the standards are not in line with your own? It's just a label. And yes, even though it does have a general consensus of acceptance by the majority, that still does not make it safe or okay for all just because they said so. But that's just one example. The biggest example that we have today really is the label of Christian. This label is thrown around everywhere, and when people use it, it often gives the majority of the world who say they believe in Messiah, it gives them a general feeling that they can trust what is coming from this Christian source. But as we have been going over all these topics surrounding the end times, from discussing the pre-tribulation rapture to the day of Yahuwah, we can see that there is a great divide between the truth and what mainstream Christianity is. The amount of doctrines that mainstream Christianity subscribes to that is contrary to the scriptures is ridiculous and astounding. From the celebration of pagan holidays to living in lawlessness, attaching themselves to the ways of this world. And now, as we have clearly exposed the lie of the pre-tribulation rapture doctrine, from the history to the false doctrine ignoring the first resurrection, to seeing that those that want to be plucked out don't recognize that they're desiring to be counted amongst the wicked. And with all of that exposed, we can clearly see that there is a real dangerous difference in following the doctrines of mainstream Christianity. And you know what? It is not easy calling out this truth because people look at this as being judgmental, or they're saying that you're speaking about what's really in their heart and whatnot. So when you make this distinction, it oftentimes can be quite controversial. Then you also have to deal with others that need to find a label for you. So they like to say, oh, don't listen to him. He's a Hebrew Israelite or a Judaizer or a Pharisee. Many different type of labels that they try to use so they can just reject what you're really trying to say. But I will tell you, I don't care about that controversy more than I care about there being voices that will say what needs to be actually said. And so this post right here might rub a few people the wrong way because you have been so attached to the labels and religion, and you more than likely don't like the idea of standing alone and being set apart, being different. I don't want to offend, but I do have something that needs to be said at this current point in time of history that we're in. If you want to be ready for Yah's kingdom, you need to come out of mainstream Christianity, aka churchianity, and be set apart and be holy. The Most High is not in the majority of these major Christian organizations. The longer you attach to them, the more you attach yourselves to the tares that Yahusha, our Messiah, has prophesied He will pluck out, gather, and toss into the fire. Our faith is not a religion summed up by a label. It is a way of life summed up by faith and obedience. And so, as we approach the times of change, you need to seek Yah's face personally outside of religious organizations and labels, and be called out and set apart to Him through seeking Him personally, through His Word, and through the indwelling of His Holy Spirit leading you. Mainstream Christianity is a major dangerous belief because the majority feel like they're safe in their faith because they don't actually know our Creator, but they know the many false doctrines in their religion that they're following. And the sad part is that the majority of them who are trying to enter into his kingdom through the broad gate, they're going to be rejected. They're going to be plucked out and they're going to be tossed into the fire. And I do not want that for anyone. So here's the thing. I just made a video about the apostate church. So if you don't understand those other topics like pagan holidays or being lawless or being a part of the world, then make sure you watch that video. But at this point in time, let me take this time to explain a major sign that needs to be clear to everyone. Let me say this. The majority of the Christian church does not recognize, nor do they expect, that everything that they see and hear out of the mainstream is a lie. And the fact that they don't recognize this shows exactly where they are in Yah's prophesied plans. Mainstream Christianity lives in the strong delusion. And besides the other factors that we spoke about, at the time that we're in right now, you can use this point I'm about to discuss to identify those who are Yah's and those who are not. If you don't recognize that we are being lied to all the time, you are in the strong delusion, and it's time for you to wake up before it's too late for you. I'm going to explain why. Let's begin. Okay, so I know what I just said in the intro can be a little hard to hear, and I know people don't like hearing people speak in such absolutes. I get it. But let's be clear, there is no more time for sugarcoating, and so you will not get that here. Let's go over what I'm talking about before you jump to conclusions. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 9, it says, "So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." So what did John tell us? He said that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, deceives the whole world. So let's just make sure that we place this as a foundational understanding, because this point is not a foundation of mainstream Christianity. The world we are in is being lied to and deceived by Satan. So look at it this way. Let's say you know a person, but you know that he is a known liar. Every time you talk with him, he's lying about something. Let me ask you, is it smart for you to believe the things that he tells you? If you say yes, or you have conditions, that makes you very naive and very easily taken advantage of. For me, rule number one in these kind of situations is that I don't believe a thing out of a liar's mouth, even if they occasionally tell the truth. I ignore these people. Rule number two is I don't get down and associate with liars in the first place. So if I know they're lying to me, you probably won't see me associating with it. What I'm saying is that you don't ever listen to what liars are telling you. That's all I'm saying. So let's take it a step further. We know Satan deceives the whole world. That's what the scripture said. We got that. Let's add more verses to it. In John chapter 8, Yahusha said, "If Elohim were your father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from Elohim, nor have I come of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech? Because you are not able to listen to my word. You are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it." That's John chapter 8, verses 42 through 44. So clearly, the devil does not stand in truth, and when he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources because he is the father of lies. Okay, we got that. Let's add more. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 3 and 4, Paul says, "But even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing, whose minds the God of this world has blinded, who do not believe, lest the light of the gospel of the glory of Messiah, who is the image of Elohim, should shine on them." It says, those who are perishing do so because their minds are blinded by the God of this world. Satan is the God of this world, blinding the minds of those who are perishing. Clear. Let's add some more. "For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Messiah. And no wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their works. That's 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 13 through 15. You see, Satan transforms himself into an angel of light, and his ministers transform themselves into ministers of righteousness, even though they are false apostles and deceitful workers. His ministers transform themselves into apostles of Messiah. So that means that in this world, Satan has ministers who preach and teach about Messiah, but they are actually ministers of Satan. So that does not only mean that we need to look out for the obvious devil worshippers who are going against Yahusha, but also there is an infiltration by Satan to bring about ministers who have transformed themselves into apostles of Messiah, but actually ministers of Satan. Hope you got that. Here's the last one. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. That's 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. So our adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour. So if you're not vigilant and sound-minded, he very likely can devour you. So these are foundational understandings any believer that is living for Yah's kingdom must have, because we do not live in this world without an enemy. Let's review this list one more time. Satan deceives the whole world. He does not stand in truth, and when he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources because he is the father of lies. Satan is the god of this world, blinding the minds of those who are perishing. He transforms himself into an angel of light, and he has ministers who preach and teach about Messiah, but they are actually ministers for his deceptions. And the devil is our adversary. He walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour. So if you're not vigilant and sound-minded, he can very likely devour you. This is it. This is it right here. This is a foundational understanding every believer should be aware of while living in this world. I mean, think about it. How can you protect yourself from an enemy that you know nothing about? And so that brings me back to the example of knowing a liar. Like I said, I don't listen to anything a liar says out of his mouth. So if that is the case, and Satan is the god of this world using his resources to spread his lies, does it make sense for me or any other believer to listen to what the world has to say about things? Satan is the god of this world. He deceives the whole world. So if he deceives the whole world, his lies cannot be secret, and something that most people in this world have been affected by. He cannot deceive the whole world in secret. He deceives the whole world through the mainstream. And so if something that you understand or know is mainstream, I guarantee you that that whole thing is probably a lie, or there is a major lie mixed in that leads people away from Yah and directly to Satan. Now get this. The reason why this is not a foundational understanding in mainstream Christianity is because it's mainstream Christianity. You need to understand that those in the mainstream doctrines of Christianity are only known by the world because they're being taught by Satan's ministers who transform themselves into ministers of Messiah. When you are following mainstream Christianity, your doctrines come from Satan. And this is why the majority does not have a clear understanding of their enemy. Because why would Satan be teaching the world about himself and how people can defend themselves against him? Clear answer, he wouldn't. And guess what? He doesn't. Satan, who deceives the whole world, has created a world that is surrounded by lies. And you can know the difference between believers based on who is actually in those lies and who is not. Now let me say this. Not everyone comes out of the lies the same way at the same time.